Hey, everyone, let's go ahead and call this afternoon's meeting of the Joint Committee on Government and Finance to order. Chair will note for the record, we do have the presence of a quorum for today's meeting. We are live streaming the meeting, so the chair will ask all of our members of the committee. If you have questions to ask or comments to make today, we'll ask you to go to this center microphone so that the folks watching remotely can get the benefit of your question. So the first order of business, of course, is the usual approval of the minutes. The agenda packet for this afternoon's meeting was distributed to all members in advance as a PDF document. I hope all members have had a chance to look at that. The question before us now is approval of the minutes of the February 11th meeting. Are there questions or comments about the draft minutes that were distributed electronically? If not, shall recognize the president for a motion for approval.
I move the minutes of the February 11th, 2025 meeting of the Joint Committee on Government and Finance as contained in the members' packets be approved.
The question is on the president's motion that the draft minutes of the February 11th meeting of the Joint Committee on Government and Finance be approved as distributed. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. As opposed to please say no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. For the benefit of all the members, the regular, periodic, and quarterly reports of the various agencies that report to the Joint Committee on Government and Finance were distributed electronically.
Can you show her that real quick?
Inspection, each of those reports. Our first order of business today is an overview of the administration's approach to economic development. We have Nick Preservati with us from the administration. Nick is director of the Office of Energy, but also has responsibilities more broadly across economic development for the administration. So, Mr. Preservati, welcome to the Joint Committee on Government and Finance.
Covered is not good.
All right, let's try it now. All right. Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, senators, delegates, on behalf of Governor Morrisey and Secretary Herridge, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to give you a baseline of where economic development stands today with two overriding factors. The first being we're several months into a new administration, and then secondly, in 8 days, economic development is going to go from a department back under Commerce as a division. With those two factors, we've done a comprehensive, or in the process of finalizing a comprehensive review of economic development, top to bottom. And I want to spend some time going over that review with you with a couple of caveats. The first is obviously until it's complete, any recommendations that we make to the governor are just that, recommendations, recognizing the governor has the ultimate authority to accept or reject those recommendations. So I just want to be sure that I'm not boxing the governor in with any comments that we say here today until we finish that review. And secondly, I think out of respect to the previous administration, I want to acknowledge that any change in direction that we take or any changes that we make is not directed towards the previous administration because they had a lot of significant successes in economic development. So I just want to say that to the extent there's a change in direction, it mirrors the governor's priorities and the economic reality at the state and the federal level with a lot of funds in that financial situation being different than it was in the last several years. And then finally, I don't have a lot of historical knowledge on a lot of the programs and the funding. So to the extent that there are technical questions and there's questions I can't answer, we'll write those down and get back to you as quickly as we can. So I'd like to start off is talking about the strategy and how we're looking at economic development. And to start, we're not looking at it in a vacuum. We're looking at economic development in conjunction with the energy policy and the workforce policy. And we think that all three have to be based upon the same principles. So what we're looking at is focusing on what West Virginia does best, which is energy, which is manufacturing, and we're taking a team approach. We're focusing on technology, energy, and advanced manufacturing. And that's the focus that we're looking at on everything that we do in regards to economic development. And then the next step would be then to develop an energy policy that supports the investment in the technology, energy, and advanced manufacturing sectors. And then finally, then making sure the workforce development strategy supports that and provides the workers and the companies the skills that they need to support the economic development strategy and the energy policy. Another concept that we are looking at is we want to look at the number of touches a project has with the West Virginia economy. And what we mean by that is if you have a widget company that distributes widgets overseas, yeah, that helps the West Virginia economy, but it doesn't touch it as much as, say, a fertilizer plant that uses the state's natural gas to develop the fertilizer, uses the state's coal reserves to generate the electricity, sends the fertilizer in-state for agriculture and blasting, and something like that will touch the economy 3, 4, 5 times and have a much more significant effect on the economy than a one-off. So we're trying to find the projects that affect the state at a much wider breadth. So going back to the first step, the way that we're looking at this is we develop this team's approach, is we go into the technology, for example, and say, we can't do all technology. So what are we going to look at? We're going to look at data centers, maybe cryptocurrency, biotechnology, cybersecurity, and we're detailing certain criteria under technology that we think West Virginia has an advantage on. We do the same with energy, electricity generation, looking at our reserves, minerals, clay, quartz, limestone, energy infrastructure. What areas do we succeed on energy? And then lastly, advanced manufacturing. We're in the process of identifying what types of advanced manufacturing. It's the aerospace industry, aeronautics, automobiles, pharmaceuticals, and an overall general manufacturing. And then once we have that determined and look at those different areas that we think we should focus on, then we have to go and look at our financing priorities. So do we look at a company's history? Do we want long-term established companies that have been around for hundreds of years that everyone knows? Or do we want to have a priority on emerging technology? It's not going to be one or the other. It's probably going to be a percentage. So what's that percentage going to be? Do we want to focus primarily on emerging companies or on standard companies? And then looking at the financial focus. Do we want to look at the collateral and the cash flow, or are we more concerned about risk tolerance? So we got to see our financing priorities, what's more important to us and how are we going to invest our dollars? And then the investment method. Do we want long-term loans, forgivable loans, grants? What works best for specific companies might not work best for others. So that's some of the priorities we're looking at. Do we want large cap, medium cap, small cap companies? What percentage do we want of those? And then how are we going to finance those? So we're taking a detailed approach at all of that. And the key is once we answer those questions, once we identify the industries, we identify the priorities, the size of the companies, how we want to invest, then we start looking at actual targets within those industries. For example, technology, we talked about this, looking at NVIDIA, Meta, Google, Microsoft. You start getting down and listing individual companies and targets you go after. And that's the same for energy and advanced manufacturing. So that's sort of the strategy of how we're looking at that. But we're also looking at it like, how do we do this? Who do we partner with? When you're looking at the economic development authorities, we want to partner with them. We make sure we have a big connection with them. Do we focus on the large companies, partner with them on the medium-sized companies, let them take the smaller companies? We just got to figure out how we do that and how we approach all of those different authorities and different entities out there so that we're all rowing in the same direction. So that's the primary, that's the strategy. What I think is important, and I think it's really important to you guys, site identification. That's the issue in West Virginia, and we've broken that down into 3 categories. The first, it's site identification. What's the universe of properties we're looking at? Some databases we've seen have 600 properties. Another database that we're looking at has 4,500 parcels. We're looking at developing a database that has every single parcel in the state of West Virginia that we can look at. So at least we know what's out there. So that's the first step, site identification. We can do that in-house, pretty simple. Next one's site screening. How do we take those 4,500 properties and get it down to 8 or 10 properties that a prospect may want? Again, that's something we can do in-house. We have the ability to do that. You look at, are they in the floodplain? How far are they from electricity? How far are they from water? That's something that we can do, no problem. Here's the issue. That's the biggest issue, and I think this legislature understands that, site readiness. What do we do once we have those 5 sites? We're looking at what other states do. Do they put millions of dollars in it? Do we do that beforehand? Do we do it after the fact? Do we work with them and give tax incentives? That's the crux of the problem for West Virginia. How do we handle site readiness? I know that there's $5 million given to the from the Legislature to Economic Development. I want to give you a quick update on that one. There was approximately 100 sites. Those have been pared down to 10 sites. Consultant has gone through and taken an objective approach, taken those 100 down to 10, and those 10 sites are going to be funded at $75,000 a piece for a mini site readiness grant. After those 10 sites are done, there's $3.25 million left to do the next round of funding. In regards to projects themselves, no projects have been rejected in the state from previous administration. We're going through them, we're reviewing them, and we should have a review of those very shortly. Available funds also, Cleveland Cliffs, we have another $50 million available for the EDA from Cleveland Cliffs, from them pulling out. $30 million available from the Infrastructure and Jobs Council, with $12 million more available come July 1.
Yeah.
This is what I see.
And of the $30 million appropriated to the legislature, $7 million of that's still available. And then finally, last update, data centers. I know everybody wants to hear about the data centers. I have 3 points about that. One, we've had overwhelming response from the utilities and from microgrids. We have companies coming in every day that want to work with utilities. We have companies coming in every day that want a microgrid. The interest is there. The U.S. Department of Energy called us and wanted to discuss our microgrid bill. They said, we want you to come to DC and explain the bill to us because we think it's amazing. And we want every single state in the country to adopt your bill. To which we said, we don't want every state in the country to adopt our bill and we don't want to come talk to you about it. Say that halfway in jest. And then finally, the DOE has reached out to us on the Mega DC project. And that is managing energy growth associated with data centers. They're going to help us determine the data centers and the growth of energy for the next 50 years to the state of West Virginia. It's Oak Ridge National Labs, the laboratory that developed the Manhattan Project and the atomic bomb, is working with West Virginia individually to help us do our data centers. So with that, Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, any questions you guys may have?
Begin with members of the committee. Let's take questions from members of the committee first. Maybe I'll start, Mr. President. Are you able to talk about the current administration's thinking or the current situation, not with just the Department of Economic Development or soon to be the division, but also the EDA?
In regards to
Just what the administration believes to be the working relationship there, how the administration will use the two in partnership, or what the administration intends to do with the EDA as it relates to the ongoing work at the department or soon to be division of economic development.
Well, thank you for that. And yes, I can speak to that. So everything that I've talked about with the strategy has involved the EDA. So they've been at the table with us, with the DED, talking about this strategy. How do we focus on the team's approach, technology, energy, advanced manufacturing? They're the ones that help give us the ideas of saying, how do we look at our bonding? Do we focus on large companies, medium-sized companies? How do we use our bond allocation? We need to have a strategy. How do we do a strategy on all of our loan proceeds? So we are working hand in hand with them and see economic development as being the marketing tool and the people that go out and try to bring in those projects, and then having the EDA be the ones that do a lot of the financing and the loans themselves. But we are working hand in hand with each other.
Look at Chris.
Hello. Okay. The things you mentioned sounds like you're trying to reinvent the wheel again, because you had change in administration. So the opportunities that were towards the end of the previous administration, where people had been here, the economic development staff had been working with, are they still involved or have they walked away?
One, they haven't walked away, and we're not reinventing the wheel. I appreciate the concern, but I want to reiterate very strong, we're not reinventing the wheel, but what we are doing is saying, do the projects from the previous administration in a pipeline, are they part of a comprehensive, cohesive strategy? Do they work for West Virginia? And we're reviewing that, and as I said before, no project has been rejected, but we have, in those meetings that we sit down, we have current staff of DED, from the secretary to the deputy secretary to other staff members in all of those meetings, participating in that. So yes, they are involved in it. Not reinventing the wheel, but we do feel like we have to be a little more focused with a more of a direct strategy. And what I'll say to that is, some of the things that we've looked at before, we see them as tactics, not strategy. So we want to incorporate the stuff that DED has historically done when they say they want to retain, expand, attract businesses. We agree with that wholeheartedly. But we see that that's a tactic, not a strategy. So overarching, we're going to focus on energy companies and technology companies, and then look at those companies to retain their business, expand their business, or attract those companies.
So you're not looking at traditional steel or traditional type of manufacturing concerns that were already in the pipeline?
No. Oh, absolutely. That goes under energy. Steel goes under energy because of the involvement and use of coal.
Well, you didn't say that earlier. That's why I'm trying to expand what you're looking
it's
at.
advanced manufacturing, all types of manufacturing, because in manufacturing is viewed as a high energy industry. All high energy industry is something that we're going to pursue because of our natural resources, so that we can utilize our natural gas and coal resources.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions from other members of the committee? Senator Martin.
Thank you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I know that one of the questions that you were asking is how do we identify those small grants, big grants? When are we going to have a timeline on what we're actually trying to, like the program that we're trying to enforce here?
The best way I can answer that as soon as possible. We recognize the importance of it, and we're trying to get through that as quickly as possible. The longer, right now that's on us. That's on me, that's other individuals in commerce, finalizing this and getting it together, and then getting that in front of the governor for his final approval. But what I can say to you is we're going as hard as we can. It's our number one priority, and we want to get that to you guys so that everyone knows what our strategy is and how we're pursuing it as soon as possible.
And while you're doing these new programs, have we given some of these companies that are wanting to come into the state answers on, yes, the state will agree to this, or have we attracted any of those businesses, or are they also on hold until we get this program started?
Well, and let me be clear. I want to make sure that I'm not overstating it, because it's not new programs. It's just a strategy in how we're utilizing the tools we already have, how we utilize the Department of Economic Development now, what we're going after, who we're seeking. So we're not trying to put a big infrastructure or this big set of programs up. We're just trying to determine how we focus. But yes, the answer to that is there are multiple companies that received loans through EDA that were pending approval, and they have received notice that their loans are approved. There are others that have not.
And maybe the program word wasn't the right word to use, but on the strategy, I'm just trying to determine on when are we going to have that strategy, and when are we going to start using that strategy to start attracting businesses here and not leaving the ones that we have talked to in the past on hold.
Well, I don't think we're not trying to leave anyone on hold. It's a review of those projects, and if those projects, unless there's some issue with those projects, we recognize that a previous administration has made commitments to those loans and those programs. So we're going to deal with those as fairly and as quickly as we can.
So the businesses that we do, or the opportunities we have on the table now, do you have an idea of a timeline of reviewing those?
They're already being reviewed, and as I said, some of them have already been approved and they've received notice of that approval. For example, Form Energy is one that was waiting for their last set of financing that was from the previous administration. We reviewed it, we acknowledged it, we approved it, we've advised them of it. There are other companies, I would say a good number have already received approval, and we're trying to get the other ones out as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Doug Akers.
Thank you for being here this evening, Mr. Preservati. It's always nice to see you. So when you talk to some of these outside interests, and let's use data centers as an example, but you can talk about any industry or commercial entity you want, is the approach you all are taking, is it, hey, we have the framework in place, this is what we already offer, if it fits with your business model, we'd like to have you come to West Virginia, or is your all's office looking at specific ways to do additional incentivization, whether it's through tax structure, low interest, no interest loans, or any other emphasis you can place on it? So again, a roundabout way is, so with the microgrid bill, you're saying, hey, this is the framework we have for you. Or are you guys going to offer additional things that we should be trying to think about ourselves in terms of legislative priorities to try to cooperate with you all and make sure we get the things done ahead of time before it's needed?
No, I appreciate it, and that's a great question. So I want to be clear is, yes, we're looking at everything, and it goes back to Delegate's Chris' comment earlier. When we say we're focusing on technology, energy, advanced manufacturing, we're just focusing on what we're really good at. Like you're saying, we already have that infrastructure there. It's like with data centers. They know that we have transmission. They know that we have generation. They know that we have these things. We're not turning anyone away. And if a company comes in and it's completely unrelated to that, and they make whatever, and they want to come to West Virginia, we're going to pursue them, and we're going to work with them as much as we can to bring them here and get those jobs. So anything that we can do, all economic development's on the table. All projects are on the table, regardless of industry. So if there are new ways and other things that we can do and work with the legislature, we're 100% in support of that. So I don't want to give the impression that we're only focusing on those three areas. It's just we're trying to pick the low-hanging fruit of the things that we're really good at and that we have the resources to do. And then anything else that's on the table, we'll go after as well. Does that answer the question?
Sorry, I'm going to make the chair of finance mad at me if I keep doing this. It does. I guess I just wanted to figure out if, again, without asking you to commit to anything specifically, if a company comes in and says, hey, we like what you have to offer, but maybe we need a better tax structure for our type of business, or maybe we need incentivization through a loan package. Those are things you're saying all around the table. I guess I'm trying to figure out if there's anything this administration maybe is going to say, hey, we're not going to do this. So as a legislature, go ahead and steer clear of these ideas. This isn't something the administration will support. Or I think what you just told us is all the above is available, whether it's tax, regulatory structure, loan incentivization, whatever it may be, you all are willing to consider everything.
Oh, yes, I think we're willing to consider anything. I've not been told that anything's off the table.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Questions from any of the members of the committee? Okay, if not, we do have a number of our members in the audience today who are not on the committee. So if there's no objection from the committee, perhaps I'll open the audience, the opportunity for other members of the legislature who are with us today to also ask questions. No? Okay, Mr. President? Okay.
Thank you, Nick, for being here. Excuse me. I have a couple questions. First of all, in this past session, in our budget, we put $30 million for small business. And that was one of my concerns in the past, with the past administration is, I didn't think we focused on small business, West Virginia, the people we actually represent, just wanting to start business, expand business. We didn't help them enough. We was all focused on, the big time players. And I'm all for that, because that's, any kind of investment's good, but especially big kind of. But what's the plans of this administration with the small business, helping the, mom and pop shops?
Yeah, I think again, there's 100% interest in moving forward and helping the small mom and pops and those kind of shops. What we're trying to do is figure out how we do that and how best we do that. And I think that's something that we'd be more than willing to work with you guys to figure out what's the best strategy to do that. But I think absolutely 100% doing that. I think that's where I was saying earlier, we need to reach out also to the economic development authorities in the counties and have better communication with them to identify what those opportunities are and develop a process where we can help them develop those. So it's not just the state, but it's the local economic development authorities that help identify those processes or those opportunities, bring them to us so that we can help them.
All right. I appreciate that, especially the funding, because we got $30 million funding, and most of these small businesses don't know where to go or how to get there, and it seems like we don't have which I agree, your local economic development would be great for that. But that's something I'm very passionate about, is the small businesses in West Virginia, because that's who employs most of our people, is our small businesses in West Virginia. And that's something, when I became Senate President, that I talked to Senator Jeffries, and that's one thing, and he agrees with. We need to focus on the people we represent more, than what we have in the past. So I appreciate you saying that. And I know of one business we lost because, and I'm hoping it was just because of the transition of power. Nobody was there, but they couldn't get anybody to call them back, and we lost them to, I believe it was Tennessee or Kentucky. I forget what, it was one of the border, or not, it wasn't Tennessee. It was one of our border states, Pennsylvania, Ohio, or one of them. Have you made steps to make sure that doesn't happen? Because it seems like, the House and Senate both in the last several years has taken economic development very seriously and did a lot of the legwork on it, recruiting these companies, going out, meeting with them on our own dime. And then, the governor would step in and take the credit more or less. But it kind of concerned me that we couldn't get anybody back from the governor's office to contact them. Do you know anything about that, or?
I don't know anything about that, and I will say that that's part of what we're looking at, is this overall strategy that we're looking at is to make sure from top to bottom that we're not just as efficient, but as effective as possible. So if that's the case, I wasn't aware of that, and I will look into it, because I think we all agree we have to call people back and do that. That's the lifeblood of economic development.
Okay, and I suggest that you work with both the House Economic Development and Senate Economic Development, because like I said, they've been very aggressive, or we've been, I shouldn't say they, we're very proactive on this, and it'd be nice if all three of us work together, the executive branch and the legislative branch.
Mr. President, I will say that I have seen over the years and even months the cooperation with the Senate and the House, the Speaker and Senator Jeffries, et cetera. I think it's what sets us apart. When people come in, they say no other state can you get the level of leadership that we get in our meetings. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we do that and going forward with it. So I'm a huge supporter of that.
Okay, good. I agree with that, because the last thing we need to do is start micromanaging it with just the executive branch. So that was just one of my concerns. All right, thank you, Nick. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Senator Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good to see you, Nick. I guess maybe I got a threefold question there. So has the governor's office, has he expressed to you, being the Department of Energy, to really start promoting West Virginia, and he's given you the resources that is going to be necessary, needed to be able to do that? First question. So second question would be, now that you're starting to get, as most of us have been, calls about the microgrid bill, what kind of comments have you been getting from these companies? What are they looking for? What are they wanting to understand? And one of the first things that I would think of that is probably the most important part of that bill was putting together, getting a liaison in place. Can you kind of comment on it, where that stands at, so that there'll be that one point person there that can point them in the directions that they need to go?
So the first question was on the energy. I will say that the governor has 100% stood behind energy and recognized its importance. Its importance to the state, its importance to economic development. And I think you see that that's the instruction from him that's caused us to go with that team's approach. I think you've seen the diagram where we have three concentric circles with that teams in the middle connecting economic development with energy, with workforce. Energy is absolutely critical. And we've been instructed to push as fast and as hard as we can on an energy policy that incorporates our baseload generation, not just coal, natural gas, potential nuclear. The legislature lifted the restriction on nuclear. We're pushing hard on that. We're pushing hard on all sources of baseload generation, and it is a priority of the governor. So I'm very excited about the support that we're getting from the governor's office on energy for that point. In regards to the data centers, the response that we get, and I think this should be taken as a compliment to the legislature, is they are blown away by the bill. They said it is extremely comprehensive. They didn't expect anything like that from any state, and they've been very, very supportive of the bill. and the issues that it addresses. The biggest concern to them that they talk to us, it's not necessarily incentives. It's not necessarily, I mean, taxes are important and low taxes. The biggest thing to them is speed to power. And they like the flexibility of being able to work with the utilities to go in to get the power, the primary power, and provide their own backup power, or flipping it, providing their own primary power and getting the backup power from the utility. They like the flexibility that bill gives them because it allows them to tinker with the economics to make the situation right for them. So the biggest thing that we've heard from them is we need to be, as a state, able to move with them on site readiness. Like, it's all about the sites. You get us sites, we want to come. That's what we hear from them. In regards to the data center liaison, I do know that there are interviews being conducted, and we're pursuing that as fast as we can to get someone in line there. But we're also making sure that we understand exactly what that position needs to be. So as we write legislative rules, as we talk with the data centers, we're using every opportunity as an instruction to see, like, what are the questions they're asking us? Because the questions they're asking us are the questions they're going to be asking the data liaison. And that's what we're seeing. So we're making progress there. I can't speak. I'm not involved in the interviewing process, so I don't want to make representations that I just don't know how far along that process, but I do know there's interviews being conducted. Does that cover your questions? Oh yeah, absolutely. So two things that we've got on the nuclear front is National Governors Association reached out to West Virginia. They reached out to all states, all 50 states, and they're going to have a in-state cohort for 3 states. And the whole purpose of that is to bring in individuals, the utilities, members from the legislature, the governor's office, whomever, and bringing in subject matter experts for a one-day conference that they're putting together to assist states that want to bring in nuclear to their state. And saying, these are the things you want to consider from a legislative point of view. These are the things you need to consider from an infrastructure point of view, from an education point of view. Here are the rough spots and the things you won't see. So they're bringing in, Kentucky's one of those states that want to do that. Tennessee's already there. Tennessee's acting like almost as a nuclear big brother to us, helping us along the path. But West Virginia was one of those states that was selected. And we have, I believe it's July 9th, they're coming to the Capitol complex to present this. If there are individuals in the legislature that want to participate in this, we've reached out to some. Reach out to our office, and it's an open door if you guys want to come. I know we've reached out to some, but anyone else that's interested, more than welcome to participate. And then we also have another coalition of states, about 8 states that are called the First Movers, that are working together on nuclear, trying to develop best practices, et cetera, for developing nuclear in their states. West Virginia is a part of that as well. So we are pursuing nuclear along with coal, natural gas, et cetera.
Other questions from any member of the legislature we might have? Bill Riley?
Thank you, and thank you, Nick. I do have a couple questions. I have heard from a couple companies who have given me feedback that they can't get answers on their investments out of the executive branch, but what you're telling me is that's not the case.
I'm gonna say it's not the case across the board. If they can't get answers, I don't know if they're saying they can't get answers or they're not getting a final decision.
They're not getting a final decision.
Final decision. I believe there are some instances where final decisions have not been made. And I will tell you that the governor's office is well aware of that issue. They're well aware of some of the companies being very frustrated and wanting those decisions, and we're working as quickly as we can to get them out.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously they're making hundreds of millions of dollars investments. When they're trying to get a final decision, you know, that becomes very frustrating. I know of at least 2 companies who have walked away from West Virginia, so that gives me a little bit of a concern. Following up from the Senate Majority Leader's questions with regards to the timing of the strategy, so EDA has seen a reduction in pipeline coming in over the past 6 months. Do you attribute that as to an economic thing or a lack of the execution in the strategy?
I believe it's due to the economic circumstances. I will tell you that we talk with the people in economic development now. They're working very hard. They are bringing in a lot of companies. The pipeline's still there.
I'm talking EDA.
EDA, yes. On the EDA, not as familiar with that, but I understand they're still pursuing projects. They're still trying to get them in the pipeline.
So what I understand and from a lot of the banking industry is they can't get a decision on the underwriting, which has deterred them from filing applications and beginning down that process. So you have seen a reduction significantly over the past 6 months. So would you mind looking into that to
Oh.
make sure that we can smooth that process out?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Mr. Webb just, I believe he's left.
He
now, and
is, yeah.
Yes, and we're working with the new leadership there. Absolutely look into that.
Okay.
And if there are specific instances, please feel free to call me along the process if we need to move on something.
The last thing has to do with site readiness. So when do you anticipate announcing those 10 sites? Do you know?
I don't,
Approximate timeframe?
I can talk to Mr. Graney,
Okay.
Secretary Graney, and see.
So you talked about 100 sites and then dropping out. So the concern that I had mentioned to you back in the session is there's a significant amount of dollars spent on consulting fees.
Yeah.
And most of the economic development agencies dropped out because they didn't feel that the process was giving them what they needed. So I asked at back in the session if you would follow up with the EDC and the Economic Development Council to really have that discussion, because I mean, essentially what you're looking for is to take out the fatal flaws in the due diligence, not to tell them, hey, they don't have water. So have you been able to follow up with the Economic Development Council?
Yeah, I have met with multiple members from the council, invited them in and met with them and have discussed many of these issues. And when we say we're looking at a strategy, that's part of it, bringing them in, not just the authorities, but the councils. So yes, and your concerns are heard and they've been echoed before. So yes, we are looking into that.
Okay. And do you anticipate matching grants in this second round of being open as just opposed to micro grants?
That's something, so that's, the micro grants have been held by economic development, and that's a process we're looking at when we say we're looking at possibly changing that. That's something that we're looking at putting on the table, is expanding it. Again, I don't want to commit to that, but that is something that we're absolutely looking at. All options on that are on the table. We want to use the remaining funds as economically and as effectively as possible.
Well, when counties who have money say we would like to spend our own money to match with yours, that's usually a pretty good investment. So
I agree with that.
thank you, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from any member? Okay, if not, Mr. President, thank you very much for making the trip up. We appreciate you making time to be with us this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
For the benefit of all members, the periodic distribution of the Board of Treasury Investments Report is in the electronic packet. So for all members, that's available for your inspection. Other business to come before today's meeting? If not, Mr. President.
Mr. Speaker, I move we adjourn.
Questions on the President's motion that we adjourn. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you.